Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Super Smash Con 2023, which was not only the first P tier of the season, but also one of the biggest upset tournaments that I have ever seen. The amount of upsets here were absolutely ridiculous. For our top 16 players, you're going to have Noi, Big D, Light, and Rafflo in 13th. In 9th, you're going to have Riddles, Tweak, Shattuck, and Apollo Kagi. In 7th, you're going to have Mars and Didi. 5th, Neo and Ken. 4th, Zomba. 3rd, Mia. 2nd, Buzz. And winning the entire thing is Aquila. So let's start by talking about some of those aforementioned upsets, starting off with Onan, who ends up getting 33rd, losing to Mars and Luis. Now, honestly, this isn't super surprising considering those are two very tough matchups. Zero Suit does fairly well versus Steve, as well as Mars was clearly fairly practiced in the matchup, but then Luis has a good record versus Onan overall, and also just incredible versus Steve. So even though it is 33rd and it is a bit of a low placement, he had some pretty tough losses there, so you can't really blame him too much. You had Kurama falling out at 65th, losing to Pina and Geist. I mean, Mario Little Mac is definitely not the easiest matchup in the world, but it is still Little Mac. The fact that Pina was able to pull that off is actually incredible. And then, guys, another Bayonetta player having so much success. You had a lot of Bayonetta players popping off this tournament, though you did have Lima falling to Fawn, the Duck Hunt player, so shout out to him for that upset. You had Siski falling out at 97, losing to Jules and Danny. Now, Siski's been a very consistent player pretty much since the second half of the season started. I mean, it hasn't been going for too long, but even towards the end of the regular season, you had him doing really well at King of Fields and Battle of the BC. Smash Factory, he was incredible. It was looking like he was going to reclaim that title of Best Samus, but with that 97th, it's going to maybe stint his progress a little bit. You also have Jackal falling out at 129th, losing to Crash 101, who's a very good Terry player, and TM7 Zap, which plays Bowser Jr., which is also just crazy that a Bowser Jr. is able to have a lot of success in 2023. But the biggest upsets of the tournament by far is Spargo falling out at 49th, losing to Lai, the Corn player from Japan, and Aaron, the Diddy Kong player. Now, this is obviously a very low placement. This is pretty much the first time that Spargo has had a bad placement, like a very bad placement throughout his entirety of Smash Ultimate, at least in the post-quarantine era, and also kind of ends that discussion for who's the best player in the world, Aquila versus Spargo. I know a lot of people were unhappy when the Lumia rankings came out and Aquila was number one. Well, now it's kind of set in stone. It's unfortunate that it had to be this way, but at least I don't have to hear about it on Twitter anymore. There are two more upsets that I just forgot to mention. You had Shutone, who ended up getting 17th place. He lost to Andres FN in the winner's side of bracket in a reverse 3-0 fashion. May I add, super impressive from Andres FN. Then he did go on a little bit of a run, but just had the misfortune of running into Mia in the loser's bracket. So there's not much you can do about that. 17th isn't the end of the world, especially when one of your losses is to Mia, but it is still an underperformance. You also had Sonics falling out at 25th, which is pretty crazy, losing to Icy Mist in the winner's side of bracket. And we've all know that Icy Mist has been the best Samus in NA for a little bit now, at least in Xanadu Homecoming. I feel like that's when she cemented her spot. But with this Sonics win, I feel like you could start putting her in the big leagues alongside Yara, alongside Sissy, in contention for that number one Samus in the world. I mean, that's literally one of the best wins you can have right now. And then Sonics fell to Didi in the loser's side of bracket, even after destroying him the last set that they played at MomoCon. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about Didi's run, because that run is incredible. But Spargo and Sonics both bowing out before top 16 at this event just kind of shows how insane it is. We also got to talk about Europe as a region, because holy, they popped off at this event. And this is without most of their top 5 players in their attendance. In my opinion, Europe's top 5 right now in some order is Quick, Lugi, Siski, Bloom Forever, and Glutony. I think that's pretty fair to say. 4 of those players were not in attendance, and the only one that was ended up bombing out. But despite that, you still had Tarek, who ended up getting 25th with wins over Ave, Grape, Colorado, Ned, and Mystery, as well as having one of the closest sets I have ever seen versus Mutace. Like, he had a comeback where he was at 170% on his last stock, and Mutace was on a fresh 0% stock, and he still won that game. Like, if you want to watch a stressful set, I highly recommend that you watch that one. You had Andres FN, already mentioned his massive win over Shuton, as well as beating Ludo and Bobo for 17th place. He's one of the only players, if not the only player, that I could think of at the super top level that uses all of the FGC characters. Honestly, I'm a big fan of that character pool. You had Rafflo being the highest placing European player, getting wins on Burr, super big Mario fan, Rivers, who he lost to in the winner's side of bracket, Dark Wizzy, and Light. This was all in losers. It was a majority Palutena, this bracket of the Samus do a little bit of work, but this is just so Europe as a region, the average skill level is getting way higher. This is without your heavy hitters like Glutony, like Bloom Forever being here. Siski, underperforms. You would expect Europe not to do super well, but you still had some incredible talent showing up, and it's not going to be super long before Europe starts to populate the top 8. Now, the highlight characters of the event, at least in the top 32 area, have to be Palutena and Corrin. I already talked about Raph Lowe's run for Palutena, but you also had Luis, who ended up getting 17th place with wins over Riku, Shu, Onin, and Black Twins. Obviously, that Onin win is massive. I already kind of talked about that, but Luis is very good versus Steve. You had Chase as well, who also got 17th with wins over Beast, Justice, Wild, Soar, and Jules. So very impressive from both of those players. But Corrin has to be the highlight character of the tournament because you had 3 of them in the top 32 winner side of bracket, which is crazy. Obviously, you're going to have Lai with his win over Spargo, as well as beating Nader, Yu, and Sen. I don't really need to convince y'all how impressive that run is. I mean, beating the first seed in any bracket is super amazing. You also had Shattuck, who ended up getting 9th place. It's been a little bit since we've had a pop-off tournament from him, so this was really nice to see. He ended up getting wins on players like Carflow, Zap, Candle, Esam, Chase, and Big D for a 9th place. I mean, just an incredible run from him. You obviously had Neo, who ended up getting top 8. We'll talk about him a little bit later on, but very interesting to see Corrin just go insanely hard at this tournament. I mean, Corrin is by no means a bad character, but seeing 3 of them in the top 32, and especially in the winner's side of bracket, is like unheard of. I also want to talk about the players that got 9th place alongside Shattuck, starting off with Riddles, who was supposed to play Geist into Lima, but since Lima got upset by Fawn, he ended up playing Geist into Deathspade, beating both those players. So still had the double bail, but just with a little bit of a different combination. Once in the top 32, he was able to pick up a win on Shattuck, but then he got double Steve, losing to Akala and Didi. And all I can say about that is, hey, it happens sometimes. You have Tweak, who ended up getting wins on Yoda Cage, Elam, and Apollo Kage. Now for Tweak, it is still consistency from him. He's getting 9th place. I mean, that's 2 tournaments in a row now. It's not a bad placement by any means, but you know, a player of his caliber is definitely not going to be happy with the results, but at least it's not like a super underperformance. It's just shy of the top 8 once again, which you know he's not going to be happy. But I also want to mention that Sephiroth did a majority of the lifting in this bracket, which does make sense. It was a Sephiroth bracket. I mean, especially for his most notable match, which was against Apollo Kage, but it's really nice to see that he still has that character that is in the works, because I feel like Diddy Kong's been doing a majority of the heavy lifting in his past couple tournaments, but the co-main is still alive and strong for the Sephiroth fans. And then finally, you're going to have Apollo Kage, who ended up picking wins on Pharaoh, Wizzy, Mutace, and no, a really nice run from him. He had a bit of an underperformance at his last tournament in Gommel, so a very nice bounce back from him. And before we do move on to the top 8, I do want to mention that if there's any players that I didn't mention in this video, and there's a lot of them I didn't mention. I mean, you had Noi, who got 13th place with Pokemon Trader and Olimar combination, which you know I gotta love, because hey, we love that PT representation out here. But we can't talk about everyone, unfortunately, so if there's a player that I left out and you want me to talk about them, please just let me know down below. I'll be sure to tell you how the run was. But now, on to the top 8. In 7th place, you had the 2 wild cards of the event in Mars and Didi. Everyone knows that these 2 players are incredible, but it's tough to gauge how they're going to do because they don't go to any events. Spoilers, the answer is very well, starting off with Didi, who was able to pick up wins on Beastly, Sonics most notably, Andre Sefan, Raflo, and Riddles, getting 2 wins on top 10 players. And I have to mention that he didn't just use Steve. I don't want to hear he's carried by Steve. Didi is probably the least carried person in this top 8 because he used Pac-Man to beat Sonics in a Game 5 set that had 4 timeouts in it, I believe. It was absolutely insane. And then he also used Pokemon Trainer in a multitude of sets. He is so good at this game. He's multifaceted, using a bunch of characters. I really love how he counterpicks. Sorry, my mic cut out there, but you had Didi actually getting double eliminated by Mia this bracket, so could have potentially gone even further if he didn't lose the guy that already beat him in winners. But regardless, an incredible run for him. I really want to see more of Didi. Speaking of players I want to see more of, you have Mars on the other side of 7th place. Now, we're probably not going to see more of Mars because he is getting surgery on Wednesday, I believe, so hopefully that goes well, because he was surgical in this bracket, beating super big Mario fan, Onin, Light, and Apollo Kage. Now, set versus Apollo Kage makes a lot of sense that he won that one. I mean, he's one of, if not the best player in the world versus Snake. Like, if you want to get good at the Snake matchup, I recommend that you watch Mars sets. His set versus Light as well. It was 11-7 previously in Mars's favor. Only game 3, but all the games were very competitive. Absolute banger. I mean, these guys are practice partners, so they're going to know a lot of habits, which always makes sense. Interesting. You had a set versus Ono, which was game 5, Zero Suit Steve, and versus Super Big Mario fan, it's going to be Kazuya versus Zero Suit. And I want to talk about ZSS spot in the meta, because very good match versus Game Watch. Very, very good matchup. Arguably Game Watch's worst matchup. Does pretty well versus Steve, either even or slight winning for Zero Suit, in my opinion. Versus Kazuya, I would say that's definitely a winning matchup for Zero Suit. Versus Sonic, I would say it's an even matchup. And then Aegis, I would say, is a losing match. So the 5 prominent characters in Smash Ultimate, Zero Suit either goes even or beats 4 of them. Now, I'm not saying Zero Suit is going to come back in the meta super hard, because the character is still very difficult and there are other matchups that exist. But I'm just saying Zero Suit's a character that has a pretty interesting niche, and Mars is definitely a player that can fill that niche. In fifth place, you're going to have Neo and Ken, starting off with Neo, who's able to pick up wins on Tachyon, Chunky Kong, Noi, and Tuigan. At this point, I feel like he's undisputed the best Corrin player in the world. I mean, Shattuck did very well at this event. You had live beating Spargo, so I feel like that has to put them in the conversation. I'll throw Leo in there as well, but I mean, Neo has just been incredible all season. And with this run, to top it off, his first run in the US, by the way, I mean, he went to Battle BC, so it's not the first time he's playing against the NA crowd, but the fact that the first time he went to America and he absolutely popped off makes me very excited to hopefully see him here again. He's such a talented player. I also got to shout out his set versus Aquila. Very competitive. Game 5, last stock, last hit, literally as close as it could have been. So hopefully we'll get a rematch like that. Maybe one where Neo is able to take it. You also had Ken getting 5th place with wins on Syrup, Axel, Mute, Sly, and Zomba. Now, he played pretty much all Sonic this tournament, and shocker, he did extremely well. It's almost like Sonic is a top 2 character in the game, and Sephiroth is as light as Olimar. Maybe one of them is better than the other. Now, I'm not saying he should completely drop Sephiroth, because there are going to be matchups where Sephiroth is going to be having more success than Sonic, but in general, Sonic should definitely be his main. Ken is the player that pops off. Sometimes this year has been a little bit more inconsistent. He's had some amazing runs, most notably his run to 2nd place at Maysuma, where he was able to beat Aquila. In 2022, though, he did have a lot more consistency, but I think if he's able to use that Sonic at least as his main character, again, don't completely drop the Sephiroth, but it should be like 80% Sonic, 20% Sephiroth, if even that. If we see that from Ken, I think we're going to see him farming events again. In 4th place, you had Zomba. 3rd place, Mia. So Zomba was able to pick up wins on T3 Dom, Ouch, Andra Sefen, Shattuck, Mars, and Neo. An amazing bounce back from his underperformance at Smash Track. I mean, we all knew that he would. He is the best player in America at this point. I feel like pretty much undisputed, but again, he's losing to his very tough matchup. He lost to Ken, Sonic, and Mia's Game Watch. To be fair, though, both the sets were very competitive. Like, he could have won both those sets, but it's just clear that he's fighting an uphill battle that he doesn't need to be fighting. So is the Lucina secondary going to come back again? Is the Link secondary going to come back? Is the Aegis, which is probably the correct choice, actually going to get revealed? I don't know. But I think if Zomba wants to shoot for the best player in the world, which he should be shooting for because he is that good, a secondary Aegis is not a terrible idea. You have Mia's run to 3rd as well, beating Modzai and Didi, and then losing to the Buzz, beating Shootone for 17th, Light for 13th, Tweak for 9th. That's to get into top 8, which is crazy because that's like 3 top 10 players right there. Beats Didi again, then beats Ken and Zomba before losing to the Buzz in the run back. We'll talk about obviously that from the Buzz's side in just a second. But Mia, incredible player, top 3 in the world, another player that I believe would be number 1 in the world. Obviously, right now, it's still a very tight race between Aquila and Spargo, but Mia is so talented in this game. His style of Game Watch is so impressive. Like, he plays this character correctly. He's the reason that I think Game Watch is top 10, maybe top 5. That could be stretching it, but when you see the stuff that Mia does, it's kind of hard enough to think that way. And we've reached our finalists, the Buzz in 2nd and Aquila in 1st. The Buzz picking up wins on Creep Puba, and the rest of the wins that he got were all Game 5, by the way, so he had a very stressful tournament. He had to reverse 3-0 chase after losing the first 2 games with Olimar, did that with Rosalina, beat Mia with all Rosalina in the first set. Versus Mars, he went Olimar in the first 2 games, won 1 and then lost 1, and then went Rosa in the last 3. Versus Ken, he went all Rosa, and versus Mia, he went all Rosa again in the 2nd set, winning it in Game 5. I mean, very stressful tournament for the Buzz, and I gotta say, all the games that he played were extremely close. He had to work very hard for it. I mean, his set with Mars, extremely stressful. Mia as well, both those sets had me on the edge of my seat. And I gotta shout out Mia as well. He did extremely well in both the sets versus DeBuzz. I had DeBuzz heavy favorite there, but Mia put up an absolute performance, so big ups to him for that. But DeBuzz, the fact that he's able to take Rosalina, a mid-tier character like at best, to 2nd place at one of the biggest ultimate events of all time is just incredible. I have a lot of confidence that DeBuzz will pick up his first major win soon. I mean, he's able to beat players that he's going to meet in the grand finals of the majors, like Mars potentially if he goes for more stuff, like Ken if he has pop-up events, definitely Mia inevitably if they ever do go to the same 2 tournaments. I could definitely see that being a grand finals. DeBuzz is an amazing player, and though he doesn't have his major win yet, it is going to come at this point. I have a lot of confidence that, way more than I've ever had before, but our winner is, of course, going to be Aquila, dropping 4 games total, 1 to DeBuzz, 1 to WebJP, and 2 to Neo. So actually, the top players in the world right now are Aquila at number 1, Neo at number 2, and DeBuzz and WebJP tied for 3rd. And I feel like at this point, if you don't think Aquila is the number 1 player in the world, you're either stupid or ignorant, because obviously Sparkle is going to have that 49th place, which definitely doesn't help the argument, but another major win for Aquila, picking up wins on WebJP, Mystery, Big D, Riddles, Neo, and 2 wins on DeBuzz. He is just phenomenal. So incredible at this game. 100% deserving of that #1 title. And honestly, I think it's going to be really hard for people to take it. Obviously, Spargo is a player that is going to be favored him in a lot of matches, but if Spargo can't make it to the point in the bracket where he's going to be fighting Aquila consistently, which obviously this is definitely one of times Spargo is not watched by any means. 100% he'll be in the top 8 of the next major he attends. But for now, it is clear sailing for Aquila. He's going to have that #1 title at least uncontested for a couple more weeks. So big ups to him for that. Got to be feeling amazing about that. And yeah, that's all I got to say. I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the sport. It's been absolutely real. Again, if there's any player that I missed at any point in the video, because there probably was, because this tournament was absolutely massive, please just let me know down below. Be sure to sub, all that yada yada. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.